Welcome back to another edition of Zero Block 30, and today is going to be absolutely packed. It's only 5 rounds, but they're packed. That's why you see the timestamp on the show. It's going to be a long one. Round number 1, if the National Guard tries to make eye contact with you, avoid them at all costs. They're going broke big time. They'll probably ask you to borrow $20. They're all over the country, and they are begging. Their children are starving because not enough billionaires, I guess, are giving them enough money. I still think that's the weirdest story to come out. Very low-key strange that in South Dakota, a billionaire can pay a couple $1 million and send the National Guard somewhere. Like National Guard for hire? Like you're a legit mercenary at that point.
Yeah, Chief from Chicago asked me like, "Hey, is this real?" And I never gave thought to that because I didn't know that that was actually a thing that could occur.
I had no idea either, but apparently it could, or they would stop it by now. Round number 2, Breaking Bad, but make those tighty whities camo instead. We've got an Air Force Walter White who got caught selling an AK-47. And that's right, folks, some methamphetamines. They're just doing a little tweaker goofing in the Air Force. Gotta love that. Round number 3, the story of the 10,000-meter thriller. And no, we're not talking about Buzz Aldrin's dick. It's the story of a young devil dog who became an unlikely champion in the 1964 Olympics. Round number 4, interpreters are all in the news. Kate got to speak with 2 signs of those coin operations. See what I did there? 2 signs of the coin operation.
That was actually really, that was really clever.
Thank you. One from a local commander who served with some interpreters and trying to get his interpreter over here. And the other one from a congressman from Florida who is trying to right this wrong through legislative measures. Good on everybody involved there. Round number 5, we're going to speak with the founder of Team Rubicon, our Team Red, White, and Blue, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Irwin, about his former soldiers not knowing how to get himself sparked a movement in the veteran community. You're going to want to hear about that and a little event that we're going to be involved with here at Zero Block 30 involving lacrosse. If it's lacrosse, Cons was involved there too, because that's a very officer thing to like. Cons is a lacrosse guy, so we have that. And all that is going to be brought to you by our good friends at Cross Country Mortgage. If you're like us here at Barstool, we are a people first group, and so is Cross Country Mortgage. They are dedicated to the fundamentals of mortgage lending, which results in a fast, convenient, and less stressful home financing or refinancing experience. I mean, this way, when I first bought my first house, I got lucky because so many times in my life, I've really caught a break where I didn't really deserve a break. It was just like happenstance and ignorance. I just happened to luck out. That happened with my first house. I was building in an area I didn't want to rent anymore. So we decided to build, and everything worked out perfectly and smoothly. And now my second house, I'm seeing how many things could go wrong. One of my buddies got fucked big time. He's building a house here on like 10 acres out in Bandera, Texas, which is the middle of nowhere. He got a quote when the lumber was at the highest price. Just the lumber alone for his house is $170,000. He signed the contract. 3 weeks later, the lumber prices dropped by 50%. That same order now that he can't back out of without losing tons of money would be like 85 grand. Like just a kick in the seat.
And there's no way to have known that was going to happen.
But there was like the futures. If you looked at the futures, you could see that the lumber prices was dropping. That's what people at Cross Country Mortgage will know. If you're trying to get your loan secure, they're going to say, hey, hold off 2 weeks. You're going to have a cheaper lumber. They know what they're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. So go with people who do. Go to crosscountrymortgage.com/Barstool to learn more about your future home buying experience so you don't get raked over the coals and trying to build or buy a new house, because it's the biggest thing that you'll buy in your life is your home. You might as well get the best rate possible. Let's get going with the show because it is a packed out one today. Kate doing big time mom stuff, big time mom moves. We were talking about it earlier. I think there's nothing worse in the world than taking your children or if you're just a pet person, your pets to the vet to get shots. Like if they don't understand what's going on. And you could really apply this to military too, like explaining to young PFCs and privates and shit, bad stuff that's about to happen. It's just so sad because they have no idea. They have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I had to take the baby for more shots today. And like, he was laying on the table looking up at me like, yo, like, hey, he was in such a good mood. And I was like, oh, buddy, shit, man. And yeah, He was kind of okay, and then the last couple hours, he's just losing his shit. So because
you'd almost rather be like Cash, right? Like where he don't know, like going back to the military thing. If you have to go to the field for 2 weeks and you're going to be doing all kinds of shitty humps, and like say your battalion commander has it set up, all right, we're going to go out and we're going to do 50 miles of hikes for over the next 3 days. I don't want to know that shit weeks in advance.
No.
I want to know when they're like, get your pack on, we're just going to walk until we're done walking. I never want to know how far I'm going to go, and I never want to know when I'm going to do it. Just make me do it, and I'm fine. I can go forever because I'm not going to quit. Once I'm out there, I'm not stopping. So you could just say, we're going to go forever. And I'm like, okay, we fucking hump till we die. I guess we'll just do this. But I will do anything in my power to get out of something that I don't want to do if I know it's coming.
Oh yeah, ignorance is bliss a lot of times. Because on the way to the doctor's appointment, he was having a great time. I was the one sweating through my shirt. I was like, oh my God, what's ahead is going to be horrible. Also starting physical therapy for my back. Gang.
That's good.
So gonna build that core up again, slowly but surely. Because this is gonna be the fall of Kate. That doesn't sound good.
No.
Maybe the autumn of Kate.
There you go. That's better.
I'm gonna get some sort of core going. We'll see.
All right. Cool.
There you go.
Cool.
I also had big medical news this week. I've been out of the military since 2013, and I got a letter in the mail after doing a routine checkup with the VA. And one of the diagnoses that I have is asthma. I have bad lungs, and whenever I got out, I had to do all these function tests for like your lungs. And that has been it's been 9 years now, essentially, since I got out. I got a letter in the mail after just going to get an x-ray, and they're like, we're going to reduce your rating from 60 to 10 based on an x-ray.
That's pretty significant.
And I was like, no, the fuck, you're not. Like, there's congressional laws that you have to follow. Like, if you have a sustained rating for longer than 5 years, they have to show marked improvement. There is no improvement. I still wheeze all the time. If you've listened to the show, you can probably hear me from time to time wheezing into the microphone and shit. The VA, man. And I talked to somebody that actually worked in the VA. You know what they told me? They said, because the place that I went to, it wasn't like a big VA clinic. It was a small little clinic in a strip mall that only had like an administrator and then an x-ray technician. That's how they are going through. We gave the VA credit a couple months ago about how fast they're getting through this backlog of veterans that need to be seen. This is how they're doing it. They're doing it with unqualified people who are just fucking everybody. Like they said, it's so common right now. And the appeals process, 90% of the appeals, like if you're appealing, you're getting your appeal because people who are doing it are on the bottom level and they have no idea what they're even doing. It's an insane process, but that's so stressful for your family. The difference between 60 and 10 is huge.
Pretty big.
That's that's what's crazy to me. Like from 60 to 70, 80 to 90 are increases, but they're incremental. But then when you go from 90 to 100, it basically doubles. I don't understand why that is. You would think it would be more evenly distributed, but it's not. So to drop down from 100 to whatever would be a significant, big time change.
Oh yeah, huge.
Well,
change.
you know why they're doing it. Why they're trying to skimp all the veterans, because they need to pay the National Guard, my friends.
They do. And I actually think that is a big part of it. I think because of 20 years of war and with so many people getting out, the VA, imagine what it's going to be like for the VA funding in 20, 30 years when you have all of us that are GWAT veterans who are all old and everybody's falling apart and you're going to the VA to get care. They are going to be inundated with people.
Yeah, that makes sense when you think about the timeline when in the last 20 years, when basically the Vietnam veterans were coming up to the age where they needed a lot of care. But
a lot of those guys and ladies didn't even know, like they didn't know what they were, what their rights were. Now with the internet, it's easier to figure out like what you're entitled to.
That's a good point. Yeah. I definitely think they're only going to get crushed further. So,
all right, let's get into the actual rounds. What do we got, Kate?
This comes to us from Haley Britsky over at Task and Purpose. The National Guard is going broke as a joke, folks. Not great. As Congress continues to squabble over funding for Capitol security in the National Guard, guardsmen around the country are bracing for the loss of valuable training time and the paychecks that come with it. 3 state adjutant generals told reporters on Friday that their service members could see a major disruption to their training schedules. That part, you're like, all right, hell yeah.
I also hate the word adjutant. That's such a stupid word.
Fair enough. But bad part, and their pay if Congress does not approve funding by August. While the three generals spoke of their states specifically, they acknowledged that the impacts they were warning of would be the same for National Guard units everywhere in the country. Air Force Major General Richard Neely said the Illinois National Guard is facing a funding shortfall of $31 million after answering the call to duty 3 separate times for Capitol defense. More than 800 troops went to Washington, D.C. in the wake of the January 6th riots at the Capitol building. Now,
it's important to point out, though, because when you think about National Guard, specifically to a state, when the heck would they ever have left the state? So the idea of housing, transportation, those costs were typically probably not baked into the budget, certainly not at this level. So this makes a lot of sense.
Usually when they will do that, they will have, there's some type of natural disaster where the president will have to declare that there's a state of emergency in order to have other National Guard members. Because that's what happens in Florida constantly. Well, you'll have Louisiana, Alabama, and all those, they'll go down there and help out when there's a natural disaster.
Yeah, instead this time it's QAnon dickheads that are screwing it all up. Right. Now, after everything our troops have done, everything their families have sacrificed, the Illinois National Guard may be required to cancel August and September drill weekends for 13,000 soldiers and airmen, cancel upcoming training events for over 1,000 federal civilian employees, ground aircraft, which will cause pilots to lose critical flight readiness ratings, cancel essential military schools, halt transportation. I could go on and on. He added that the funding lapses could cause full-time guardsmen to lose 2 full months of drill pay, which many of these troops and their families depend on. That fucking sucks. Guardsmen around the country are attempting to recover from an extremely busy year. As we recall, COVID-19, anywhere there was a giant facility doing testing, vaccines, whatever, the National Guard was there. Pandemic, hurricanes, wildfires, and eventually the attack on the Capitol this year. After pro-Donald Trump rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th, thousands were deployed there. We covered that, the whole bad food game that went down. The lapse in funding, the whole sleeping in a parking garage thing that went down. The lapse in funding isn't a surprise. General Daniel Hokanson, chief of the National Guard, has been sounding the alarm on it for months. Hokanson told lawmakers in May that if the Guard did not receive reimbursement for the $521 million it spent on Capitol security by August 1st, it would have a big impact on readiness. While Democrats and Republicans acknowledge the importance of funding the National Guard, they're failing to find common ground on the size and the scope of the funding package. Shocker to no one. Democrats are arguing that the funding should go beyond the Guard and invest in hardening the Capitol to avert another attack, while Republicans accuse Democrats of stuffing the package with extraneous items. There you go. My goodness.
And this thing, it's weird that this is happening. Like, you would think of all the things that you fund, when you call the National Guard in, you fucking pay for it. Like, you call somebody in, you pay for it. Like, how is this even a thing where they're arguing and going back and forth? You pay your damn bills.
If they really loved their country, they'd do it for free. They would go down there for free.
I just don't understand how you get to that spot where they are just like, no, we're not going to do it. $521 million? You can't just shit $521 million.
No, you can't. I know you could. It would take a while. Take a lot of protein.
At first, I was going to say, it might be exciting to not have to go drill for 2 months, not realizing until we got further along in the story. I didn't realize they don't get paid unless they drill.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they just got the paycheck.
No, it's not like those cushy officers that we constantly get in the DMs that are waiting for flight school, that they have to wait for like 7 months and they get told to go home, and they're back at NAS Pensacola for like 2 hours PTing and then going home. What a life that is.
Well, I was thinking ways I could raise money for the National Guard. Couple ideas. Politicians, you pay to pie them in the face. Okay. And I bet a lot of people, there's a lot of politicians I would like to where's Duncan Hunter at? I'll give him a nice whipped cream to the noodle. Anyway, what's wrong with me? What about be a troop for a weekend getaway packages?
What about an actual rough and rowdy fight? Like, if you had 2 of the most hated like congressmen, congresswomen on both sides of the aisle fight. Like, if you had Marjorie Greene Taylor versus AOC and Rough and Rowdy,
I would pay
like
big bucks.
The amount of money that people would pay, like
bucks.
Throw them in the octagon, have Sleepy Joe and Donald Trump in the octagon to pay for it on pay-per-view. If you had all these different folks, Hell in the Cell with Lindsey Graham versus like fucking Al Franken, like bring him back because he's still pissed. Like you have some of those things. It'd be wonderful.
I love it too, because some of these people, they're so frail and old. So the idea that they could last.
Bring Chuck Grassley's 88-year-old ass out there.
He's just like limping in, and it's like, don't hurt the old man. Boom, right off the top rope.
Although I will give Chuck Grassley credit. I believe it was him where he was at some event with another military member who's now in Congress. I can't remember who the other person was, but it was Chuck Grassley is like 88 years old. He dropped down on the stage and started busting out like push-ups and shit, and like good push-ups. It's like this dude's in his 80s and rocking these push-ups better than a lot of the people that I've seen in like PT videos that come through ZBT's mentions.
I always get so perturbed. Like, you got to know better. If your push-ups look like ass, don't let anybody post that picture or that video of you doing push-ups. You're just going to get roasted every time.
Yeah, that's if you're gonna do push-ups on video, you got to make sure your back is completely straight. You got to be a hardo about it. I think you're fine if you were never in the military, but if you're in the military and your push-ups are fucked, that's just an automatic. You're just gonna get roasted for that.
That's another idea. Pull-ups. The National Guard could invite locals to come to PT sessions with them for a small price. People paying out the wazoo for a gym. Why don't you come PT with your National Guard, my friend?
Have you seen some of them though? They don't look like they should be leading any PT sessions.
Maybe a bake sale, maybe an Airbnb. They could rent out the barracks Airbnb style. Role players.
How about this? Sell a little meth.
What about selling a little bit of meth? And there's
cook some meth in the Capitol.
There's somebody they could talk to in the Air Force who could tell them all about it.
Oh, there's definitely people that are in the armed forces that could really.
The armed forces.
Those folks that are it, like Lady Loves Taft, her husband, that is the NBC dude. You telling me that those guys can't figure out how to make the best meth on the planet? We've covered stories on this show before where that has been a thing that has happened at like remote bases and stuff like that. I'm certain of it. So. All right, and round number 2, we'll move on to that. This one is about a little bit of meth gooping from Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. They're going to prison for nearly 3 years after pleading guilty to selling a large quantity of methamphetamines for illegally selling several weapons, including AK-47, according to the Justice Department. Airman Basic, which is what? Who knows? Anybody know? No. E3. There you go, E3 and the Air Force's Airman Basic. 41 years old, formerly a master sergeant. Oof. Wait. So Airman Basic, Michael Raymer is 41. Oh, formerly. Okay. Yeah, formerly an E7 was he was sentenced to 32 months in prison in federal court on Tuesday following his arrest on September 2019. Reimers pleaded guilty to selling meth and dealing firearms without a license. On top of the prison term, U.S. District Judge Kent Dawson also sentenced Reimers to 3 years of supervised release. In March, a general court martial also sentenced Reimers to 48 months of confinement, a demotion from Master Sergeant to Airman Basic, the lowest possible rank. Oh, so it is an E1. Yeah, and 80. Oh, yeah, airman, 84. Just straight up airman is E3, and a dishonorable discharge. Reimers previously served as a non-commissioned officer in charge of installation spectrum operations for the 99th Comm Squadron. Lieutenant Colonel Brian McGarry, a spokesman, told Task and Purpose. From July to September of 2019, Reimers allegedly sold cocaine and more than 50 grams of meth, according to the DOJ. He also sold an AK-47, .25 caliber handgun. That can't be right. That can't be right. That's got to be a typo. I would say it's a 22 caliber handgun. It's probably what he had, and a 12 gauge shotgun without a license. However, Reimers pleaded guilty to 1 count of distribution of a controlled substance and 1 count of dealing firearms. So this guy, 50 grams of meth. That's not a lot of meth. And if they don't even mention the amount of coke, it's got to be a super small amount of coke. Going to jail for that long for what amounts to probably $250-$300, not great. Not great. But you can't be meth goofing, man. You can't be meth goofing. And that's one I am very libertarian in my perspective on this. I think most drugs should be legalized. I don't think the federal government, state government should have any business telling you what you can do as a grown person. If you want to smoke weed, fine. If you want to buy cocaine, fine. Just throw a little warning label on there and let people do what they want to do. One, when you legalize something, you take the underground nature of it away that involves so much sex trafficking and things like that, like the illegal nature and how to get it here. The working conditions for the people that are supplying the cocaine is so much worse. If you have it legalized, look at what's going on in Amsterdam, the drug usage doesn't drastically go up. But that being said, meth, still pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
So I'm sorry, you're advocating to legalize cocaine and methamphetamine?
No, not meth. Overall, I would say legalize every single drug. I don't think that drugs should be illegal, period.
It's probably for the best for me that cocaine's not legal.
Yeah,
but if it was legal, it would be much more monitored, right? Like it's the same way as where moonshine's not illegal. It's not legal because you can't like check it. Like it's not going through the checks and balances part. If you have Coke that's clean and it's actually looked at by the government, you have your inspectors and things like that. You're much
Coke
more
inspectors.
likely. And there is Coke inspectors, by the way. That's how we had the scent kit in the dog community. The most pure cocaine in the world is going to be inside a dog scent kit because that's what we train them on. Same thing with heroin. Same thing with ecstasy. Same thing. Well, MDMA is ecstasy.
Wait.
Same thing with hash.
So you had access to all of those drugs at your disposal?
Every day for almost a decade. I had access to all those drugs. I had access to 9 different types of explosives.
Wow. Good on our military for training to that level, but I guess I'm just surprised that we don't hear more stories about that going awry. But also it makes sense that you would need them to train with that level of accuracy. So I get it.
Oh, well, and you are fucked. And you know it because you have to sign it out on a logbook. It's weighed to the gram, like to the 10th of the gram. And if it's off by a 10th of a gram, you have to, what?
I'm just thinking, imagine you're coming back from training. Oh, you trip, you drop a bunch of Coke. It's like, uh-oh.
Dude, it's like that. And not just with drugs. It's like that with explosives.
Yeah.
There was a time where we were doing IED training with the dogs and you bury shit. So we would take our sticks of C4 and we would bury it. Well, somehow one of them got clipped, something crazy happened where somebody ran over it with a truck, which they weren't supposed to do. Obviously, it was bad training. I wasn't in charge of it. I was a junior troop at the time, but a little chunk of the corner got taken off of the C4. So you have to go in and you have to weigh it and do all these things. Well, coming back and we were like, we can't find the other piece. We're short like an ounce of the C4. Provost Marshal's investigation, all kinds of shit just right off the bat. So you have to have the purest stuff because that's what you're going to use. And whenever you do it, you have to have the best. The cocaine, from what I understand, to get to the original point, the cocaine from there, if you just did a little sniff, it would fuck you up for just a long ass time because it's so pure.
Yeah.
Well,
next question. Is this just cocaine that they confiscate or is this cocaine that
lab
we have?
made?
Oh, so we're making our own cocaine in this country.
Oh yeah. I mean, the DEA does all that stuff. Like that's how they train. Like they have the different agencies, like the different federal agencies have all kinds of drugs that they make and manufacture to see how they can do it, the testing and things like that. There's big time documentaries on places where they will confiscate it and then they will purify it again and then put it in the hands of law enforcement so they can train with it.
This is fascinating. This all makes complete sense. And I think it's great that we do it, but I just never gave thought to it, but it really is fascinating.
Well, if you're fascinated by that, there's this documentary that was unbelievable. And it's about this story that happened in Boston, like just outside of Boston. It was through their federal court system there, or no, it was a state court system. So in Boston, they had one major crime lab in the entire state. And in this state lab, you had 3 people essentially who worked there, and that was it. And they tested every single drug for every single crime that was drug related in the state. One of the ladies who was there started taking liquid methamphetamines and just adding it to like her coffee and shit like that, and then putting it in different places and falsifying all types of records. It ended up the Supreme Court of Massachusetts had to throw out like 5,000 cases of drug use and drug convictions because this lady was the one that was listed on there, and everything that she said about like integrity, it was all called in question because she was a legit drug addict going into the fucking bathroom and smoking crack at work. Legit.
Was this on Netflix?
Yes, it's called How to Fix a Drug Scandal on Netflix. And the woman was, the two women were lab chemist Sonia Farrak and Annie Dugan. They were the ones. And it's really fascinating. How to Fix a Drug Scandal on Netflix. My personal thoughts on this Reimers fella is that he saw the news about the Air Force allowing walking for their physical fitness tests. And he said, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I have to up our street cred somehow. I have to make us seem cool and tough again. I'm going to sell meth. And his heart wasn't all in it. He wasn't crazy about it. He said, I'll just do a little bit, little cocaine, little meth, little AK, like just dabble. And then maybe when word gets out, we'll seem cool again. I think it's a street cred thing. So.
And all you have to really do to look cool is have very sheared testicles. Like that's it. Like as long as your testicles are looking like I don't know, like a chicken named Hennifer. Delivered your testicles in a small little chicken coop. I think that's what you're looking for. If you want to have the smoothest balls on the planet, go to manscaped.com with the promo code ZERO. It's 0, and you're going to get 20% off. They're going to give you their Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped. It's here to get you ready. Inside, you'll have their Lawnmower 4.0. Eventually, you got to think that with all this Lawnmower 4.0, eventually they're going to have a riding lawnmower. Right? Like you got to have a riding lawnmower for a Manscaped where somebody can just get on and shave that dick like that, or your flaps, whatever you use, because I have heard it's good for the lady butthole too. The Lawnmower 4.0 has 7,000 RPM motor and a multi-function on-off, so it can engage a travel lock and gives you the ability to turn on 4,000 LED spotlight on and off when needed. That is key. Because there's been many a time where you're going in there to shave and you're like, I could really use a spotlight. Well, now you don't have to look like a goober with a cave light attached to your head whenever you're going in there. You can just pull this bad boy on, turn the light on, and you're good to go. Just go to manscaped.com, enter the promo code 0 to get 20% off. Let's move on to round number 3, which is what? What do we have for round 3?
For round number 3, it's just kind of cool with the Olympics upon us is kind of a neat story that I had never heard of. The 10,000 meter thriller. You forget there's a couple. There's a soldier going to the Olympics right now. There's a few people.
I think there's like 15, right?
14.
14 soldiers.
Yeah, we should cover that. We should probably cover that soon. My bad.
Former guest of the show, Jenna, almost got on. She was like 1 match away.
Yeah, we'll have to do that next episode. Maybe we'll list off who's doing what. But in one of sporting history's greatest upsets, a 26-year-old crew cut Marine Lieutenant Billy Mills ran an Olympic record. He ran the 10,000 meters. How many laps is that? How long is that? 10,000 meters. That's a lot, right?
So that's a whole bunch of laps.
Yeah, 10,000 meters. So a 5K is 3.2 miles. So that's about 6.5 miles.
Well, he ran that in 28 minutes, 24 seconds.
It's 25 laps. 25 laps.
He ran 25 laps in 28 minutes, basically, which, holy shit, that is fast as hell, to take gold in Tokyo on October 14th, 1964.
More impressive to do that doing laps than it is just a road course.
Agreed.
Because you just get so bored. Like
did
you ever do fitness tests? I did a one fitness test on a track where you had to do like 3 loops around where it was 1 mile. Doing that 9 times is so fucking boring.
Yeah.
And you lose track too. You're like, what fucking lap am I on?
Oh yeah. It's super boring. And you get in your head so much. I mean, at the Olympics of all places too, I'm sure you're like, oh my God.
At least it'd be things to look at in the crowd. Like if you're going through, you could find different people dressed certain way. You're like, oh, look at this smoke bro of the day.
Well, this 10,000 meter thriller, that was Stars and Stripes. That was the headline that they had. Mills scores upset. The story described the victory, the first by the United States at that distance, as one of the biggest shocks ever, and said that nobody expected the young Marine to beat the favorite, an Australian world record holder named Ron Clark. 57 years later, Mills, now 83, has vivid memories of his epic race, including his final sprint to victory, inspired by the vision of an eagle. When his energy was flagging, the bird of prey reminded him of his late father's advice, it takes a dream to heal broken wings, and gave him the power.
These broken wings
and let me fly away. Na, 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 na. Anyways, as a member of the Oglala Lakota tribe, Mills grew up on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. He was orphaned at age 12, but excelled at running, earned a track scholarship to the University of Kansas. Prejudice left deep scars on him as a youngster. He recalled being told to step out of photographs of groups of runners because of his dark skin. So racism was breaking my heart, he said. So he got through it by recalling his father's advice. It goes on to tell the story. He gets into the Marine Corps. They see that if you can run in the Marine Corps, it doesn't matter if you suck at your job. It doesn't matter if you...
That's like 90% your first 5 years.
90% of your first 5 years is can you run?
Shooting and running. It's like 90% of it.
Yeah. So they see he's a good runner. They encourage him to try out. He trains for the Olympics. He gets qualified in. And he goes for it. 5 days before his race, he writes himself another message. I am ready. Gold medal, 10,000 meters. It was going to be the journey, not the destination, that would heal me and give me wings to fly, he said. He was confident he could keep up with anyone in the world for 6 miles. 6 miles, guys. And that the race would come down to the final 2 laps.
I nailed that, by the way. Got it.
Yeah. But the world record pace set by Clark was a challenge. Not until the halfway mark, when the Australian slowed, did Mills realize his rival was suffering too. By the final lap, the lead group included Mills, Clark, and Mohamed Gamoudi, a Tunisian soldier who won gold in the 5,000 meters in Mexico City. Anyways, he's with this elite group. He's got diabetes, by the way, so he's got low blood sugar at the same time. The odds are against him. He's not a favorite to win. And then he saw a message from my father on another runner's jersey, an eagle. I thought, one more try, and I just exploded. He blew past the other guys. He sees his wife cheering by the end of the finish line. He crushes it. He ends up winning. I healed a broken soul, and in the process, I won a gold medal. And after the games, he said he was looking around for the jersey that had the eagle on it that he was chasing, couldn't see it anywhere.
He said, I went to find the runner with the eagle on his jersey, but there was no eagle. There was simply a perception.
Yeah.
Ooh. And I love these things where it comes out now where people are like, they write themselves motivational notes and it comes true. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not as cool when it doesn't come true, but I forget what that woman's name is in the UFC, who constantly, whenever her back is against the cage and she's getting ready to fight, she just says to Rose, she just sits there and says, I'm the best. I'm the best. And she just mouths it to herself over and over again. And when she's on the ground and like somebody's on top of her, you could still see her mouthing it like, I'm the best, like to get herself into the mindset. And if you were beating somebody and this person on the ground is like, I'm the best, it would kind of fuck with you.
Like, wait, what's going on? I thought
you're like, I'm hurting you. I just put my fucking elbow through your face and you're saying that you're the best. You're objectively not the best right now.
Yeah. But it's effective. Yeah, it gets in your head. But I just thought that was kind of a cool story with the Olympics coming up. He left the Marines at the end of his 3 years service, settled in California, sold insurance for a living, raised 4 daughters, had a happy life. But I just thought that was a neat story. I kind of didn't realize till I read this that we could go to the Olympics and stuff like that when you're active duty and everything. I don't know why I didn't realize that. We had the Marine Corps women's basketball team living in our barracks at one point. So I should have realized that there's a lot of
and also the Olympics is so bizarre comparatively to other sports. Well, I guess most sports are like that unless you're like a transcendent star. But like this guy, Olympian, nobody ever expected it, beat a world record holder. He could be walking down the street in his hometown, most likely, and people wouldn't know who he is, even though he's an Olympian. Same thing with that guy who raced the ZBT truck at the NASCAR event. Like his mom being an Olympian, downhill racer in the 80s. He'd never heard of her. And you go like as an Olympian, you're the best in the world at something. And the same goes for baseball. Like if you're a relief pitcher, you could be a relief pitcher for 10 years in the major leagues. Once you're out for like 30 years, 95% of the people in the United States won't know who you are.
Yeah, there's so many cool stories out there I just wanted to tell this one.
Long journey. Other people have long journeys are who, Kate? Interpreters, right?
Interpreters. Yes, they certainly do.
Exactly right. If you want to sit down and listen to this story that Kate has from a captain, we'll start with the captain first. Make sure that you're kept safe with SimpliSafe. SimpliSafe is the best way to keep your home safe. If you're in and around, if you're on an appointment and your family needs to be protected, make sure that you're going with SimpliSafe. They have been doing this thing for a long time. They are voted the best home security system over and over again. They have highly trained security experts ready whenever you need them. That's why during a fire, burglary, emergency situation, they're going to be there for you. And that's all you can ask for. There's always someone there who has your back. Go to SimpliSafe.com right now, and you can use /CBT to get a free security camera. You also get a 60-day risk-free trial. So there's nothing to lose at SimpliSafe.com. So we're going to roll into 2 straight interviews, one with an we're not.
No, there's context that needs to be had here,
Okay,
Chaz.
give
I'm
them
not
Katie
rolling
context.
right into
Okay.
giving them Katie context.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so this near and dear to my heart, the interpreters, when I was in Afghanistan, we had several that they become like close friends to you. You're with them 24/7. And as you'll hear in one of these interviews, they wore the Marine Corps uniform. They didn't sleep in a separate area. Oftentimes I'd be in a tent and they would be just right on the other side of the tent from me or on the plywood wall. You live with them, you eat with them.
A lot of times they're the favorite person in the platoon.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, you're right, because they're only doing helpful things and they kind of don't have to listen to everybody else's rules. So it's an interesting
and you'll hear them tell like a platoon sergeant or platoon commander go fuck themselves.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
And part of that is you're hanging out in the smoke pit in the evenings and you're talking to them and where are you from? Like what part of Afghanistan are you from? What are your hopes and your dreams and the same thing across the board to get to America, to get myself and my family to America, to start a new life, to start a better life. And that's something that was promised them. Now the war is coming to an end. The withdrawal is happening, we saw in some cases, in the middle of the night with the lights getting flipped off and Afghan commanders being like, wait, where are the Americans? What the hell? What the heck? What the heck? What the heck?
Huh?
What the hell?
Wait, what?
Hey, what the? What the heck? Anyway, so all of a sudden there's a sense of urgency to get, because the Taliban, again, we'll cover it a little bit in these interviews, they've been looking out. They know exactly who's been helping us and they've been biding their time. And now as soon as we're gone, it's really, really bad news, especially for people like interpreters. So there's over 17,000 right now in waiting, but Afghan interpreters and their families who have been cleared to come home to the not to come home to the United States, but to come to the United States, they will be initially
you could say home to the United States. That's where they want it to be. Yeah.
For Fort Lee, Virginia, the White House announced Monday, the Army base and potentially other military installations will serve as short-term home for Afghans whose work for the United States military during operations in Afghanistan has imperiled them and their families. That so far only means about 700 interpreters and 1,800 of their dependents have been cleared. There is still so many more. And there's bureaucracy, there's red tape, there's a lot. And we're talking tens of thousands of people who it's not an exaggeration to say it is life or death. So first up, I wanted to give you a bigger scale picture of the things here with Representative Mike Waltz from Florida. He is a combat decorated Green Beret, still serving as a colonel in the U.S. Army National Guard. Hope he's getting paid. Oh my God, round one. So he is the first Green Beret to be elected to Congress, no big deal. And he, along with other military veterans, have been leading the charge on this issue. Get these interpreters and their families the hell out of there and get them to the United States. So here, we'll just jump right into that one.
Representative Waltz, back in 2020, you were one of the few who was outspoken about this bureaucratic limbo that interpreters and their families were stuck in. And in June, you held a press conference urging President Biden to take immediate action, which leads me to ask, what has been the holdup in the first place here? What's going on with this that just now, all of a sudden, it's a big deal?
Yeah, so even before the announcement withdrawal, it's a huge problem. I mean, they're averaging 800 days. Think about how many years that is to go through this process, 14-step process that the State Department puts people through. Now, look, we need to have proper vetting. You don't want to have bad apples slipping in to the system or people who have it jumping ahead, in line of people that truly deserve it. But geez, 800 days. And as you know, the Taliban didn't just start hunting these individuals down after the withdrawal announcement. This has been happening for years. And in fact, around 2015, one of my interpreters that I had worked with in a previous tour was found at a checkpoint with an ID card and documentation on him that he had worked with Americans. They took him back to his village, and the Taliban beheaded not just him, but his brothers and cousins to send a message to everyone about working with us.
And I mean, that is, people are wondering, oh, what's the sense of urgency? That is exactly, there's no kindness there. It truly is. It's a deadline for so many. How many are waiting right now? And, you just kind of spoke on the dangers they face, but what are other problems they face if we don't get them out of there?
So right now, the best data that the State Department has is about 18,000 individuals. Now the program also includes their family members. So anywhere from 50 to 70,000 when you include the family members. But it's about 18,000 that are somewhere in that 14-step process. But they are scattered all over Afghanistan. Many of them, believe me, they're reaching out to me on WhatsApp and Signal and any way they can, are in hiding. They're moving from house to house. Their families and tribes and villages have received death threats that, like, unless their family turns them over, the Taliban will start killing the family members. Right. That's how brutal and kind of insidious this is. And that's why, look, this isn't a political thing. I mean, Republican and Democrat senators and members of Congress, mainly veterans that have served over there, have been pounding the table at the administration to get these people out. We can debate whether we should withdraw or not. I think sadly, Al-Qaeda is going to come roaring back, and eventually we're going to have to go back. But regardless of that, we have a moral obligation to help these people, and it's a national security imperative, because if we do have to go back, who's going to trust us again if they've seen everyone who worked with us get slaughtered?
Right. And so what is the holdup? I know you said it's this big 14-step process. What is I know an act just passed through Congress. It's going to the Senate now to speed things up a little bit, I believe. But why can't we just rush it through, get them on planes, get them over here? Like, what is the...
Yeah, I know. I'm asking the same question. And the reason it was so urgent is I wanted it done before the Defense Department pulled everything out.
Right.
Now they pulled all their planes out, all their helicopters out. They shut down Bagram Air Base. So now it's going to be even harder than it already was. The Defense Department said they were ready to do it. The government of Guam actually said they would receive them as a kind of a third party place where the vetting and process could continue. It was all sitting with the White House. And I still don't have a clear answer of what has taken them so long to make this decision. I could tell you, again, I don't want to over politicize this, but Senator Biden in 1975 did not support the evacuation of the South Vietnamese people back then, and said we had no moral obligation. So I just don't think he gets it.
Right. And how can we get him to get it? What can anybody listening to this show right now, how can they create a stir, and how can they show this matters?
Yeah, every veteran that knows that these interpreters were risking not just their lives, but their entire family's lives, standing with us shoulder to shoulder. Keep letting your member of Congress know, because we're going to continue to apply pressure to get this done and get it done quickly. But also, we do have an initial tranche coming to Fort Lee, Virginia, about 700. And I would encourage them to contribute if they can to No One Left Behind. It's a nonprofit that specializes in then integrating these Afghans, helping them with clothes, transportation, housing, and helping them find jobs and integrating into American society. I've worked with No One Left Behind on this issue for years. They're a very legitimate, great organization. And so now it's applying pressure to get the rest of them out, but then also helping integrate those who we are getting out into American society as brand new immigrants.
Right. And I think so many veterans that I've spoken with, this has been a really emotional issue for them, seeing what their interpreters are facing now. And I think there's just so much moral injury with the whole war in Afghanistan. And I feel like this small little thing, well, at least the least we could do is get these interpreters out and help, there's already so much we struggle with seeing the Taliban and Al-Qaeda take it back over and all that stuff. I feel like it would at least help a little bit with the moral injury aspect of it if we could get a fire under Biden's ass and get this going a little faster. Why is this?
I'm going to use your words. We need to light a fire under his ass, and we need everybody listening to help, and then help integrate them once they're here, for sure.
Absolutely. And you were just on 60 Minutes speaking on this, but I wanted to ask you, why is it so important to you personally?
Yeah, so it's the same reason it is to you and to so many others. I mean, these are people who stood with us shoulder to shoulder, pulling guard duty with a rifle in their hands, taking bullets just like we were in a common cause against extremism, right? And against terrorism. And at the end of the day, when you're in the foxhole, nobody cares about black, white, and brown, or whether you're rich or poor, or, Jewish, Christian, any of that other stuff. It's just that we're in a common fight together. And these were our brothers and sisters that were in that fight with us. I have successfully sponsored some over. One is on the cover of my book. He's now a U.S. Citizen, and his family is thriving. And, as I mentioned, I've lost some too. I don't want to lose another one. We need to get them out. And then we need to help them integrate once they're here.
And what is the best case scenario moving forward now? Say Biden gives the green light. Okay, what is the best case scenario that you hope to see? Because time is of the essence. What's the best possible way this could go?
I want to see an evacuation, a la, what we did, similar to what we did in South Vietnam, where, we had plane loads going in, you had vetting on the ground, but then we get them to Guam or to our base in Qatar. Some will come that have already gone through all of the security vetting here to the United States. But the ones who need to finish that processing, let's get them to do it in a safe place.
Right.
Then there's even beyond that, beyond the interpreters, there's a bigger issue, right? Of 25% of the Afghan parliament were women, journalists, civil society leaders, people who publicly spoke out against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban over the last couple of decades. Look, if we're talking asylum, refugees as a country that accepts, people with open arms, I can't think of people who deserve it more than those who took a public stand with us. They may not check every box on the SIV interpreter program, but I think they're just as deserving. That's going to be kind of the next round.
Right. Making exceptions, not looking at it as such a black and white thing. I was reading too, so many, because there's a lot of veterans reaching out saying, I'm trying to get my guy, but he's missing one signature from this contractor who doesn't work at DynCorp anymore, and blah, 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 stuff like that. If we could just say, let's look to the side a little bit.
Well, we're doing that. One of the bills that we're moving through this week will actually get rid of some of the more ridiculous parts of the process and shorten it some, and then also add another 8,000 authorizations on top of what's already authorized. So that one's on Congress, and we're working on that this week to try to get rid of some of the stupider parts of the process.
But they still have to answer 3 riddles. Right. That's the big part of it. And thank you so much for your time. I definitely have had a lot of people reaching out to me, a lot of veterans trying to figure out, how do I even find my old interpreter, people online. I spoke to a veteran the other day who has been sending his own money to the family of his interpreter, trying to get him back. Other people whose interpreters are stuck in places like Turkey and, kind of in this limbo that you're talking about. And I also heard people saying, well, what about national security? You can't bring them over. But I think you made a great point. It's a bigger threat to our national security to have countries look at us and see if we've done this the wrong way and not trust us moving forwards and not want to work with us. So
that's all over the world. And that's also if we have to go back in, if Al-Qaeda comes roaring back, right?
Right.
But people need to understand too, that these interpreters go through a lot of vetting, about as much as you can before they're even allowed to work with us, particularly in the special operations community. So they go through way more, and we won't even get into what's happening on the southern border, right? Just as a contrast, where people are just coming across from 50 to 60 different countries. That's a worry. These interpreters have gone through extensive vetting before they even become interpreters, and then vetting on top of that. So I'm confident with that part of it.
So reach out to your Congress members, reach out to your local, do whatever you can, make a fuss online, and feel free to bug Representative Mike Waltz if you have something you want to know. No One Left Behind is a huge one. And is there anything else that you want to say? Anything else that's in the works right now?
No, look, we're going to continue. We're going to continue pounding the table on this. We have that 18,000 that we're going to get out, and hopefully sooner than later. But then there's that, like I said, that kind of broader group of folks, civil society leaders, journalists, writers, female politicians in particular, that are already being targeted by the Taliban. We can't leave them behind either, and we have to stand up for them. We have to honor our promises and keep our word.
Absolutely.
And this kind of stuff is one of the reasons I ran for office and put up with all of this garbage that we have to in politics. It's because we have that dirt under our fingernails and that perspective that we can bring to these kind of issues.
Right. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I'm so glad that you are doing that and that because it really does matter to so many of us. It's heartbreaking to see what's going on. So thank you so much. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's across the board. He's working with, I know Representative Crow from Colorado, who's a Democrat. He's Republican. Doesn't matter. Across the board, pretty much every veteran in Congress right now is working to get this done. So hopefully they could do that. And then up next, I interviewed former Army Captain Sayer Payne. And just listening to him, I chopped this interview up a little bit because there was so much of it. So there's only going to be some key points and stories about his own interpreter, but it's more of a personal story. He has been spending his own money trying to get it to the wife of his interpreter in Afghanistan. If he could, he would just get the guy a flight out on his own. And there's so many veterans across the board who I think would do anything to get their Terps out of there now that the way that it's going. So this is an interview with Army Captain Sayer Payne.
All right. I am now joined by former Army Captain Sayer Payne, who has been trying to get his interpreter stateside for about 7 years now. And it sounds like it truly is a life or death situation at this point. Do you mind giving us some background on where you were, what your mission was, and how this interpreter came into your life?
Sure. So about came home 10 years ago from a year-long deployment. I was a infantry officer with the 101st Airborne Division, and we deployed in the summer of 2010 and came back summer of 2011 for at that time there's a very big surge that went on in Afghanistan, particularly the south of the country. A lot of U.S. assets were in the east, Kabul region. That's where you hear like Korengal, there's Pech Valley, Restrepo. A lot of media, because I'm saying this because a lot of my family thought their pictures of Afghanistan were the east. Well, in the south is Kandahar.
Right.
Helmand, the Marines were there. And specifically, this was really getting plussed up with Americans. 100,000, the surge of Iraq, essentially, we were doing in Afghanistan. Over 100,000 troops. And specifically, we were essentially applying the coin doctrine, the General Petraeus coin doctrine that at that time seemed to be working out in Afghanistan or in Iraq.
Right.
My peers at this time in Iraq is actually pretty stable. And so my impression from that time is, hey, let's take a shot of Afghanistan. Kind of took off in a bad way. Taliban took over after about 2006. They gained another stronghold because we were elsewhere in Iraq. And it was essentially what I'm trying to describe is, even though we've been in Afghanistan since 2001, our region was kind of an area that was pretty austere. It wasn't built up, and it was highly kinetic. And importantly, this is the area where Mullah Omar, who founded the Taliban, was from.
And what area is this?
This is Zari district.
Okay.
Within Kandahar province. Kandahar in general. So this is about probably an hour or so west of Kandahar city, very rural area. There is no water. There is no electricity. It's just a very austere environment.
And you get placed there tasked with doing coin, which essentially I explained to people counterinsurgency. The idea was to build up the infrastructure, to build up the local government, and kind of putting our American way of life on them to try and make things stable so that they wouldn't need to rely on the Taliban. That was the idea behind it. And to do so, you had to have interpreters who could connect with the local population. Otherwise, the whole mission was pointless.
Well, and that's why it gets me talking, because I'm trying to describe the mission, because the mission is, for 1 year, in the historical homeland of the Taliban, that they will protect with every ounce of energy and fighting that they have. They will fight tooth and nail to the man. And so that's an issue. Humanitarian assistance is an issue. Opening schools is an issue. Trying to establish to the people that they can go to the government. Government officials are the people they can trust, not the shadow government that the Taliban also. If there's a Afghan mayor that's a minister, let's say, from the government, there's going to be a Taliban mayor. If there's a provincial governor, there's a Taliban provincial governor. If there's a land dispute between farmers, the Taliban want that farmer to go to the Taliban and not the government. So, and then again, we got Afghan National Army counterpart. We could not do a mission by ourselves.
Mhm.
On top of the fact that then one of the missions, sure, it might be combat, but another mission could be, like I mentioned, the humanitarian side of things. Just delivering rice. Well, guess what? The locals don't speak English either.
Mhm.
How do we communicate with them? Even the Afghan National Army guys, some of them have problems with dialect because there are multiple languages spoken in Afghanistan. And so I had Afghan Army guys from different regions, different ethnicity of Afghanistan that couldn't communicate with some of the locals. And again, we had an interpreter translating another Afghan person in the Army. So that is counterinsurgency, because counterinsurgency is about being with and among the people. The combat and stuff is almost like, I mean, I want to say it's primary because without security, you can't have coin. But a lot of it does kind of feel secondary to a certain extent because of such at that level engagement with the people at really the lowest level. And I was a lieutenant back then, a platoon leader. That's on the ground. Those are the guys doing all of those things, actually carrying out these sort of missions, whether it's the fighting or the delivery of goods or whatever it may be, or just talking to people and saying, hey, introducing ourselves. A lot of the people, they don't know who we are. They're not, again, I mentioned they don't have electricity. They don't have TV. They don't really have the radios. A lot of the news is from the local communities. And so a lot of them thought we were Russians still.
Right.
They don't know and they don't care. We're just someone, they really, especially the locals, they're kind of caught in the middle between a lot of this fighting. And just being able to just have a conversation as two human beings trying to figure this situation out would have been impossible without an interpreter.
Right. The entire mission, the whole mission of Afghanistan hinged on interpreters. We could not have done it without them. So where does this in particular, this gentleman that you're fighting for now, where does he come into play?
So he comes into play in the sense that we had him from essentially the beginning. And the way an interpreter, I just like to describe how an interpreter is used. We have more, we had several of them. Some come and go. I would say we had about 3. One is in the United States. I'd like to say that right now. One is here. Okay. The program does work and can work. 4 children here he's raising them right now in the United States. That's success. The second one is stranded in Turkey over one of those paperwork issues right now. And again, he's applied. He was there 10 years ago and he applied probably 9 years ago. And he's still in limbo because his letter of recommendation supervisor was one of those defense contractors with kind of a funky email, and he misspelled the email. And so when the State Department person went to trust but verify the letter, of course it kicks back, and they just deny it because
red tape, bureaucracy.
And he kind of gave up because it is daunting. But anyway, we fired that back up. So he's in limbo, but at least he's in Turkey. Now this third interpreter, whom I thought was dead, actually. I thought he died 5 years ago. I haven't heard from him. The other 2 thought he was dead too. He's not, and I have talked to him on the phone. I've confirmed it is him, but he is currently stranded in the Kabul region. And he's just he's in hiding right now.
Right.
And the reason he's in hiding is because everybody in his hometown village, they all know what he did in the military. And what the Taliban are doing right now is they're telling everybody, they're saying, hey, listen, the invaders are gone. We pushed them out just like we did the Soviets, just like we did everybody else. If you give up the puppets, that's what they really call these the interpreters, the puppets of the Americans, you'll be safe. And I mean, and that's a very, and they mean it, right? They will follow through on their threats.
Oh yeah.
And so you've got a populace of innocents that could easily give up my interpreter. That's my current fear right now is they're actively looking for him. They burned his house down. They've threatened my interpreter's family for his whereabouts. He has no safe place to go right now. So I'm really trying to work on temporarily just getting him a safe haven wherever he is right now, just a roof over his head type safe haven. Secondly, how can we get him on a flight? He's a pending SIV applicant, waiting on an answer, which takes time.
Right.
I will vouch for him left and right, up and down. I don't know what else to say about that. Besides, I know there are paperwork issues and boxes that we have to check, but he needs to get out of the country right now, because if he stays, he's already marked. My interpreter, on top of that, actually has been identified and targeted. And it happened when he went on leave 10 years ago. I remember it. The Taliban hunt. He had to kind of, because they do get to kind of come back and hang out with their families. And then, and that got disrupted because Taliban found out about him and started tracking him down.
Right. So this man put his life on the line. And again, to you guys, he was invaluable. You could not have done your mission without him. He put his life on the line to help you guys. And now he's trapped in this limbo, sort of, and he's among tens of thousands who are in the same boat right now. And it's paperwork and bureaucracy and red tape. You said something interesting to me earlier about the Taliban and people in Guantanamo Bay. If you could kind of talk about the irony of that a little bit.
The ultimate issue for me is about, well, it's a duty that we owe to our allies, and you don't leave anybody behind. And that's a very strong, I mean, I'll speak for the almost military about that, just as one guy, but you don't leave somebody behind, and you don't make promises that you can't keep, and you don't lie to people. And an interpreter is in a particularly precarious position because they wear the United States uniform, for one thing. They don't wear an Afghan uniform. They wear the ACU with us. They sleep with us in our barracks type place, or whatever you want to call our living conditions. They don't sleep with the Afghan National Army. They sleep with the U.S. soldiers. They're housed with us at all times. They do speak English. And a lot of them, they could have served in the Afghan National Army. They could have served in the National Police or any other sort of government position if they wanted to, I'm sure. But the interpreter chooses all of these things, and they also walk the mission. I mean, we had an interpreter that was walking up front, and he got shot, grazed right across the forehead. And that wasn't an accident. I guarantee, because there weren't many shots that day, I guarantee that was a Taliban member picking the interpreter off intentionally.
Oh,
he
sure.
missed, but he was going for the interpreter. And they know all of this. And the question is, why are they going? And they know that the Taliban, the retribution is real. And they know all of these things. And so the question is, like, why are they doing it? Some of it, is bettering the country and, and getting the Taliban out. They're all, first and foremost, they're all sick and tired of the Taliban and the evil that they perpetuate upon the populace. Right there. But then there's a secondary dream of one day going to the United States. If you put your time in and live in the trenches with people like 101st Airborne Division or the Marines or 80 or anybody that's in the fight, in the thick of it. Why would someone do that? Well, there's a promise there. And so they're fulfilling their end of it. And what I just simply cannot accept is to let that go. When we left Vietnam, we can talk all days about that war, but at the end of the day, we left with planes so full they could barely fly. If there's somebody who lives on my street at home who's my age, who's a product of two of those refugees who happened to be on one of those flights. His dad flew for the South Vietnamese military because guess what? He was a dead man.
Right. And it was like, let's worry about the bureaucracy and red tape later. Let's get them to safety and then, sort things out from there, kind of thing. Their safety was the top priority. And that's no longer the case with these Afghan interpreters. And the irony that you pointed out was that prisoners in Guantanamo Bay right now seem to have more protections than these interpreters.
And that absolutely, because, and here's exactly how it plays out. I write the embassy last week to say, hey, we have an asylum seeker. I want you to know that this guy, here's his picture, here's his name, here's everything about him. He is legit. He's not making it up. He has direct threat to his life right now. Well, this interpreter has no standing to assert any protections for the U.S. government to be involved. If this interpreter would to set foot on U.S. soil, that's a little different. So if he was able to cross the border from Mexico, he could seek asylum in a different way than someone from South America could, because it is sort of nation specific. And having that foot on the ground is what gives one the ability to seek refuge. Here, he has no standing. He has a broken promise made. He has his actions that he made that like, hey, I fulfilled my end of the bargain, US. But when we're talking about how can the interpreter right or wrong, let's say if he feels that he's been wronged by the US and he does have certain rights, he has nothing. He has nothing. The embassy kicked him away. They said, sorry, can't help. But meanwhile, any terrorist, any actor in Guantanamo Bay that was captured in Afghanistan, they're still there. They're able to assert they've got due process. They can do a writ of habeas corpus if they want to, because it's just the way the system works with a criminal. And again, you have an ally and a friend who have put their lives on the line for this promise. And I just also find it troubling because even right now, his spirit, my interpreter's spirits are very high, and I'm the angry one and mad at, let's say my government,
right? When
he is it's just very interesting the way I'd like to state how other people view the United States. A lot of people in the world view the United States is the land of the free. It is the home of the brave. Okay, and he trusts that we're going to make the right decision. He does right now. He is trusting because he knows what the United States stands for, especially when he has operated with us in the country that all he's known. He was born in, around 1990 or so, which is just right after the Soviets left. And within 5 or 6 years, the Taliban took over. And then 5 or 6 years after that, the Americans came. He's known nothing but war. His parents have known nothing but war. And he has friends that have made it to the United States. Right. I mean, we are the promised land. And to think that the United States, he just doesn't blame the United States for any of these bureaucratic things at all. That's why my other interpreter is still in Turkey, and he just kind of gave up. He said, well, I tried. They said no, and it sort of is what it is. Right. And they just sort of accept it because they believe that the United States has it is the country that does the right thing. Truly. And again, that's a burden I believe on all of our shoulders then.
Yeah. And is that why it's so important to you? I had reached out to you because I read about you speaking with Task and Purpose, that publication. You want to get this story out there. Why is it so important to you? And has anyone else from your unit joined you in this sentiment? And is anybody else like keeping in contact with these interpreters and trying to help?
Yeah, it's important to me first and foremost, just as a moral obligation to our allies. You don't abandon your allies. Just flat out. You can even put that on a national security thing. Forget about the moral part. Let's just talk strategic. What happens in our next war when we need local allies? I don't think it's going to go away having local nationals that risk it for really the strategic interests of the United States. That's what happened here. If we fall on our promises in the future, no one's going to want to sign up because they're not going to trust the word of whoever's promising whatever. So we're the land of the free and the home of the brave now. But if we don't behave the way we need to behave, things are going to change. That's complacency. And it's just, to me, it's a leadership effort of, well, we would all say doing the right thing. And we want to make the war in Afghanistan, everybody, people that have been there, of course, you want to make it worth it. And you don't want, it's already, it's a violent
There's enough moral injury there for a lot of veterans who served. Yeah.
You don't want it to be meaningless. And at least, you want to look for the positive. And some of that is bringing someone to the United States who would love to raise their family in safety here. I mean, that is the American dream. Right. We as a country will be better for it with people like this, truly. And their children will grow up to become amazing people. I know that. Yes. And so it's to me, it's like, it's compounded. It's me because I'm personally involved with it, but it's just me as an American who wants the next generation to do great things too. Yeah. That's important to me too. And I think bringing people like this to our country is what separates us from any other nation. They truly know what the world is like. A lot of us here don't really know what real bad things are in the world, what evil is. Those protections. And I have soldiers now, to answer your question, that right now it's things are starting to roll now. I've got 2 other soldiers, one in Michigan. He's repped out, and I wrote it down. I'll text it to you after. Sure. I want to get the representative. There's a representative that I'd like to get, a Michigan representative.
Mm-hmm.
He's working on it. I have Brad Wenstrup working on it. Another soldier I have of mine in Virginia has Senator Warner working on it now. We've got Democrats, we've got Republicans. That's another why. You know what? I don't think it matters. I think you take a poll. This is something Americans are united about. I think it's commonsensical, where if you were to present this scenario in front of your average Joe or Susie, they're going to say, are you kidding me? Why the hell would we leave these people stranded? Are you kidding me? It's got nothing to do with D or R. This is a time for American leadership to solve a problem.
Right. It's one of the few things that across the aisles right now that I've seen from veterans in Congress and in this who are working together on this. So it's a big thing. So I'm glad the ball is rolling. I'm hoping the best for you. So the latest you've heard is that people are working on it. I hope that it works out for him. And have you been getting other people trying to get their interpreters back, reaching out to you, asking for advice? Like, what advice would you have if you're a veteran listening right now in contact with your interpreter and you want to help them in the same way you're doing it?
Number one is whoever your congressperson is. Reach out to them. They supposedly have they're supposed to have an embassy contact.
Okay.
So they have their own channels. That I think is the quickest way. Or if you don't know anybody, if you know, what I'm doing personally is I'm trying to get into the State Department, because this is a State Department function. They're going to be the doers on the ground, I think. I've been out of the Army since 2012. So, I should reiterate that I'm not in the federal government at all. I don't know, I know people from 10 years ago, but it's not my industry. Right. It's not where I don't know people. But I do know people that might know people. And that's what it is. It's about telling the story. As many people as you know, and really the story I'm just trying to quickly tell people is I've got a person who is an interpreter. I vouch for them. They are an SIV applicant, and I've got to get their name on a flight out of the country that we said that we're doing.
So rally the troops, rally the people and hey, everybody, let's all bug this representative for this interpreter, this person right here. Let's get the word out and kind of rally the troops in a way, sort of, to do it. So
we have to get action. I don't know how to do it either. We have to get action because right now, without action, words are meaningless. And all I've been hearing for a long time are words. I don't care about words at all. What are you going to do about it? It's a problem that, again, take a poll that most people will acknowledge. Right. So let's just fix it.
And do you want, and I guess we can pretty much, kind of close it out there, but is there anything else you want to say? And do you want to know people like, hey, you can follow me on Twitter if you want to get involved, blah, blah, blah. Anything you kind of want to put out there to close it out?
Yeah, I would like to say my email, you can reach me on my email. It's Sayer, it's probably spelled Sierra Alpha Romeo, or I'm not going to do that. Sayer.payne@gmail.com.
SAYRE. Yep.
.PAYNE@gmail. And I'm Sayer Payne on Twitter. I don't really do the Twitter, but it's a way to direct message me. Same thing with Instagram. I have the same name, Sayer Payne, for all of those. And email me, because I am kind of a point person. Nobody knows the right answer right here. And so what that means when there are no perfect answers, you just need to start executing common sense, reducing the dumbest things from the bottom, ticking them away, and just going with whatever kind of you have with. That's what I'm doing. It's called violence of action. So if you want to help with that, anybody wants to help with that or join the train, we're on it. But other than that, I don't know what else to do besides keep trying to be vocal about it and just reach as many smart, ethical people that I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. If you're out there, you're listening, you're interested, hit him up, School Circle on Captain Payne.
I think, if you have even 5 minutes of your time, call your representative or send a letter or do something, because this really, really matters. There's so much moral injury
And all that is xenophobia. That's it. Like, it's like Islamophobia. Like, they're just scared because there are people coming from Afghanistan, and it makes no sense. No one has worked harder to rid Afghanistan of terrorism and those type of ideologies than the interpreters. Like, when you have these people, I don't think people really realize how combat hardened these folks are, like, and how much combat they've actually seen. Like, when you do your tour of 7 months, a year, whatever, and you go back, they're not going back. They're staying in the same exact spot and continuing to do combat operation after combat operation. Many of them, I've told stories about the interpreter that I had named Kyle, and how he was shot on 3 separate occasions. And the things that he went through is just absolutely insane. And his family, like, the amount of money that they got wasn't a whole lot, but they did it because they cared about their country. We have to do something. Australia needs to do something as well.
Think about this too. And I'm sure it was the same for your interpreters as well. They have to disguise their identity while they're doing that. So they're doing something in the face of danger, not only in combat with, bullets flying, but knowing that if their identity is leaked back to the Taliban, that's going to be the end of them and their family as well. So the fact that they were willing to risk their lives sort of in 2 ways is very admirable. And if we made the promises, because I actually didn't know prior to this, but if we promised them that we would bring them, we need to make good on the promise.
We certainly promised them that we would do it.
Simple as that thing.
Yes, you have to be a person of your word, a country of your word, or the next time you go someplace, they're not going to sign on. And to really drive this point home, I'm sure you guys remember, it was a couple years ago. It might have been like 10 years ago, actually. Now there was a leaked document from like the highest levels of ISIS, where they had a hit list of Americans who were like general level officers or high level operators in different units. And they put like home addresses out of where these people lived. And the fear that it struck inside the United States, even though there was no actionable actions taken inside the United States against any of these military members' families, the fear that struck within the military community because your family might be targeted for operations that you did overseas, it shook the military to its core. And we really had to do something. These people did that every day for 20 years. Every day, willingly, knowing that they are already in their backyard and they're still going to do it. That's courage in spades, and we need to reward that, because that's the exact type of person that you want in the United States, I think, at least. Let's move on to another interview that we're going to do, and this one is going to be presented by our good friends at 3Chi. I've talked ad nauseum about how much I like 3Chi. I've talked about it when they're paying. I've talked about it when they're not paying. I just fucking love CBD. Not CBD. I love 3Chi.
Whole office loves 3Chi. The whole office talks about it, and the whole office has it around everywhere.
I think we'd be so sad if that ad deal ever went away. People would cry.
Yeah.
I went to the beach with a bunch of other Barstool people 4th of July weekend, and just on the dining room table was just all the 3Chi stuff spread out that they had brought. So yeah.
My friends, certain friends that come over, and it's one of the Delta 8 is one of the only legal things that you could do THC wise in Texas. And one of my friends came over and she was like, I heard you talking about Rice Krispie treats, 3Chi. Do you got any of those? I was like, my friend, I have the regular and I have the Fruity Pebble one. So like whichever one you got, I got that. You can have that kind of decadence, I guess I will say, in your drawer as well. If you go to 3chi.com, use a promo code ZBT2021 at checkout, you're going to receive 5% off your order. That's 3chi.com. Now, Cons, explain a little bit what we got here.
Yeah, so I was finally able to sit down with Mike Irwin, who founded Team RWB. So I've known about Team RWB basically since its inception. I've had friends that have stood up chapters all over the country. I think it's an absolutely awesome organization. And this year they became the presenting sponsor for the Shootout for Soldiers, which is a 24-hour lacrosse tournament. And the mission is to use lacrosse as a platform to support American veterans and foster community engagement. So they bring all these great organizations together in multiple locations and do this 24-hour lacrosse tournament. And this year they reached out to us and said, what if we do the 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. as the Zero Dark 30 hour presented by Zero Blog 30? So we are one of the presenting sponsors now for this event this weekend. So I thought it was finally time to sit down with Mike Irwin to talk about his time in the Army. He's still in the Army, and how and why he started Team RWB. So here is Colonel Irwin. All right, joining me now is a guy who I've been trying to get in touch with for what feels like a few years now, because I know he's got an interesting story. I know he runs an awesome organization, and I've finally been able to track down Mike Irwin, veteran and founder of Team RWB. Maybe you heard of it, maybe you haven't, but we'll get into that. So just thank you, Mike, for finally finding some time. I know you got a busy schedule, so I appreciate you joining me.
Hey, absolutely, Con. First of all, just outstanding to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. And yeah, it's been a wild ride, not just in the past 18 months, but really for the past, 5-6 years, ever since leaving active duty. As we know, it's a journey.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So with active duty, how is it that you even got into the military?
Yeah, geez. So backtracking a little bit. So 1998 is when I graduated high school, got picked up to go to West Point. And, things were like moving along, there. And then all of a sudden 9/11 takes place at the start of my senior year. And so things got real serious real quick. And, that led me to branch intelligence. So I ended up doing, I thought I was going to do 5 years and get out, like a lot of people who go to service academies, you think, or you enlist in the Army for, hey, I'm going to do my 1 3-year enlistment and then I'm getting out. And then sure enough, for some people, you end up doing a whole career. But bottom line is that it brought a real sense of urgency to the service in the military. And so I went Fort Hood, Texas, deployed to Iraq for a year as part of Iraqi Freedom second rotation, and then battles in Najaf, battles of Fallujah. Again, I was the intel, one of the intel nerds in support of everything going on, but it was incredible. And then I went to 3rd Special Forces Group, again, intel officer in support of a task force of Green Berets spread out across half of Afghanistan. So I just had amazing opportunities to serve, and it brought out that competitive fire in me. And so, before I knew it, I thought I was getting out, and then nope, just kidding, staying in. I found a passion for the intel world. Then I got picked up to go back and teach at our alma mater at West Point. So they sent me to grad school at the University of Michigan for 2 years, and then I went back and taught. But before I did, that's when I started Team Red, White, and Blue, and that kind of, once again, brought a fork into my journey down the road when I decided to transition to the reserves later on. But I'm fast forwarding through the story a little bit, but
yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot to unpack there, Mike. Let's start with you're a firstie. Yep. Interestingly, so you're class of 02, you're the bicentennial class, so that's special by itself. But then your class are firsties when 9/11 happens. Just talk to me and walk me through what that day was like on 9/11 being at school.
Yeah, what's crazy is that it was almost 20 years ago. And of course, we know that from the psychology research that very emotional events are seared into our memory, good and bad. And, for that one, what's really interesting is 2 things. One, we got our ring 3 weeks earlier, and I had lunch at Windows to the World on the 106th floor, in late August. And then Roger Clemens was trying to become the first pitcher in Major League Baseball history to go to 20-1, right? So his record was 19-1. He was pitching that night, and I played baseball at West Point, so big baseball guy. So a bunch of us said, we got to go down and try to catch history. And so on September 10th, I went down there. The game got rained out. I remember driving across the George Washington Bridge at around 9:30 at night, driving back to West Point to make it back before taps.
I know that drill all too well.
That's right. But moving out, right, and there I am, and I looked down, to the south, and you saw the Twin Towers, and so it was literally, 12 hours later, they were both, collapsed. So, it was very emotional. A mutual friend of ours, Joe Quinn, right, lost his brother. We had some people in our class who had parents that were serving in the Pentagon. And so there was a lot of unknowns, for close friends and family who were there. So that was emotional. But then, of course, just knowing that, you were right up the river, 45 miles or so from the attacks, that made it very real. Coupled with the fact of that, hey, this was certainly an act of terrorism, and this changes our future in a big way. So all these emotions kind of rushing together, but it feels like it was just yesterday.
So for those who have never heard of it, tell everybody, what is Team RWB, and really what was the aha moment that you had that said this organization needs to exist?
Yeah. Great question. So I left 3rd Special Forces Group in 2009, and one of the things that earned me credibility with a bunch of Green Berets was that I was a fitness guy. So I was a big runner, ruck march, the Army physical fitness test, all that kind of stuff, but especially on the running side. So I did the New York City Marathon, and in 2008, I did the JFK 50 miler. And so, you know, for those who know what that is, it starts like in Maryland and it goes up and up the Appalachian Trail and all that. And so you do 50 miles. It's about a 10-hour day for someone like me. The winners do it in like, 5.5 hours.
Which is absurd.
Yeah, which is like ridiculous. It makes me just shake my head. But, so I did that and a whole bunch of them, like, because I've developed a very close relationship with a lot of them, over the 3 years that I was there, the 2 deployments, all that. And they're like, Irwin, you're going to get soft, dude. You're going to go to grad school and you're going to stop exercising. I know you're out here. You feel the need and the pressure to impress us. And so there's a lot of smack talking from a handful of them. And so when I got there, I was like, dude, they're right. Like I've got to put something like on my plate that's going to compel massive action. And so I signed back up for the JFK 50 miler and said, okay, if I can sign up for the JFK 50 miler, then that will at least force me to put in enough miles that, that I'm, not going to be able to slack off too much. Right. Because you could do, once you run an ultra, you can go, I could go do a marathon like right now, even without training. Doing an ultra is a different story though, because you gotta you're doubling up the distance to do 50. And if you go longer than that, it's a whole nother story. But so bottom line, cons, is that, I did that and I started realizing as I started looking around Facebook, I had just joined Facebook like the year before when, Facebook was a lot different than it is now. But like I was looking around and I started seeing a lot of my soldiers who had retired or ETS'd. And I started to see a lot of them kind of struggle on the mental front. Some of them struggle on letting go of the physical fitness aspect. And I was like, man, there's really something here about the challenge of transition. And how do I know? Because I essentially went through it. So I didn't leave the Army, but I basically did. So for 2 years, I didn't have a unit. I was technically assigned to a unit in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, but I didn't have like an actual unit that I was responsible to and all that. So I was like, wow, imagine if, because I still was in the Army, had my pay, had my healthcare, had my sense of purpose and identity that I'm still a soldier. Imagine all that goes away and no longer the mandatory physical training.
Yeah. Because that's what makes it so easy for a lot of guys is they're just told, they know like, okay, at 0530, 06, whatever it is, this is where I got to be. And this is what I have to do. That's right. 100%. It's not even an option. It's part of the job, right? Like, if you decide to not do it, eventually, a couple of times you get in trouble. So, right. So, and then it becomes much more painful to skip out on PT than it does to just wake up and take it on the chin, even if you've been out partying or out late the night before. So bottom line is that, I saw all that, the struggle of that, but also the challenges that lots of people that I had served with were having. And so this is where like that kind of that high op tempo kicked in of being like, all right, I can't go back to Afghanistan because, oh, by the way, at the same time, that unit that I was part of, 1st Battalion, 3rd SF Group, was back in the fight, right? And some of them had, sustained, injuries and KIAs. And so now that's beaten me down, right? Psychologically, I've got some survivor's shame, not that I was there in the fight, but I was like almost even worse than that is like, I'm over here back home and my buddies who a year ago I was deployed with are now back in the fight and they're taking it on the chin. And so all these things kind of, came together, coupled with that 2 guys I knew really well, 2 Green Berets were almost killed. Both had severe injuries, and an Air Force pararescueman named Joel Gens, who I never met, didn't know him, but he was from the town over next to Ann Arbor. He was killed in action in June of 2010. And so I put my uniform on, went to the services. I write about this in Lead Yourself First, but it was a hot day in June, put on my Army greens, made of wool and all that, and go there and just like, talk to the family and all that. And like, so all these, just crashing, like cacophony of emotions, right? Of like seeing that and feeling that and seeing people that I knew being wounded and people over there. And like, I was like, what do I got to do? I got to do something, And so I think very often for all of us, and especially veterans, when we start going to like a dark place, an emotionally volatile place, right? The more that we kind of like lean into that and kind of like almost like wallow in the negative emotions, the worse it gets, right? And what do most people do? They booze it up, right? Substance abuse, they don't process their emotions in a healthy way. And I started to come to this conclusion on these long runs on my own, because I kind of owed it to my buddies of like, hey, no, like I'm not going to get soft. I started to find like some clarity, in this, I can create an organization that can really help veterans
And at the same time, tap into the power of PT and physical training that we all know is so powerful. So it all was, as you know, anytime you start anything, it's all very foggy and very cloudy in the beginning, right? But if you can like lean in with the emotions and really just do that mental and psychological and emotional work, you can emerge stronger with something really powerful on the back end. And that's really what I saw happen with Team Red, White, and Blue.
And what does Team Red, White, and Blue look like today? Are there, I know there are chapters all over the country, but what does your mission look like today compared to when you started?
Yeah.
In terms of just the numbers, what does that look like now?
So two things. So Team Red, White, and Blue, so 501c3 nonprofit, our mission, our Northern Star, to enrich veterans' lives. Our vision, how we get there, is that we're forging America's leading health and wellness community. Interesting point. You asked about how we started. Actually, in the very beginning, we started out with the mission of to enrich the lives of America's wounded veterans and their families. We started out with an explicit focus on wounded. And over the first 18 months, what we came to realize is that actually a lot of veterans needed Team Red, White, and Blue and needed help. They didn't identify as being wounded, whether they were struggling with the invisible wounds of war or whatever it might be. But by broadening it up and saying, hey, no, we're for all veterans, we were able to actually to pull in more wounded veterans. But we started out with like literally one chapter in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And then people like Will Reynolds, my West Point classmate, my brother, 05 graduate, Trip Adams down in Chicago, Gary Bartels and Chris Wydell down in Texas. So we had like 5 or 6 chapters, at about year 2, 2.5. And then like it just started to catch fire. The Today Show profiled us and told the story of Team Red, White, and Blue. And we started seeing more and more people raise their hands. They had seen for long enough what was going on in the organization and said, like, I want to be a part of that. And so today we're nearly 200 chapters, over 225,000 members. As you know, 70% are what we call VGRAD, Veteran, Guard, Reserve, Active Duty. And then 30% are people who never served in the military. So they might have family members, friends, just patriotic Americans who want to help veterans. And so, yeah, we're, almost 250,000 members here probably by the end of the year.
Wow. I'll be honest, I didn't know it was that high, but I think that's absolutely fantastic to hear that number said out loud. So I applaud you for that. And really and this isn't to diminish what you guys do and what you're about, but it's almost like a very simple idea, right? It's like just collecting everybody around that same idea of PT and enriching people's mental well-being and their physical well-being at the same time. Because I know, as we know now, in recent years, the topic of mental health has become a real hot button, and more people are breaking down the barrier to have that discussion and to realize. So I'll tell you for myself, and I'm curious to hear what it was like for you, but coming, and I've told this on the show, the podcast before, but coming from West Point, being an Army athlete, I always felt like, well, I won't get mixed up with PTSD because I'm mentally tough. I made it through West Point. I played a sport. I owe it to all those guys to be mentally tougher. And I kind of denied very obvious signs of things that were affecting me. Was that the case for you as well?
So, part of it for me being an intelligence officer is that my kind of psychological struggles were typically different. So what branch were you?
I was artillery. Yeah.
So very often, the combat arms, artillery and armor and infantry. But then of course, some that were out there patrolling the streets, like my brother, who's an armor officer. So mine was that I would be the person that infantry and special forces soldiers would come to for the briefs before going on their missions.
Right.
And so like if I didn't do a good job painting an accurate picture of the enemy threat or the position, and then there was an IED attack or there was an ambush and soldiers got killed, I felt personally responsible for that, and even though people would tell you, hey, as long as you did your best and that doesn't really kind of suffice, for you. But, so, for me, that was a big part of it was, and I don't even know what you call that, because it's not really survivor's guilt or survivor's shame, but it's a matter of I'm not even out there on the front lines. you know, and what I was doing was very important. You know, I'm always very clear on that. I was on National Geographic and they branded me as a Green Beret officer. I get all kinds of shit for that. Yeah. I'm like, you know, I'm like, no, I clarified 18 times that I was an intelligence officer for a special forces unit. But, but they were like, oh, sure. You know, but you know, it's like they're out there doing these really, really dangerous things. And my job was to support them. Well, you need people to do that job and to do it well. And so I didn't have an ego issue with that, but it was definitely a sense of, you know, I didn't put myself out there in harm's way nearly as much as so many other people that I knew. And that was just the reality of the job. And I went on some missions and I, you know, left the wire, you know, probably about once a month, you know, once every 3 weeks or so on my deployments, but you know, that's nothing compared to what people were doing on a daily basis. So, you know, for me, that was it. And then, you know, just the emotions of it all. I remember coming back from my 2009 deployment after the third one, and we had, you know, taken some heavy casualties, and my previous unit from the 1st Cavalry Division had taken super heavy casualties over in Bakuba, over in Iraq. And I lost, you know, people that I knew like Skylar Haynes and Eric Ross and, you know, these great Americans who, you know, were like 24 years old when I was a 22-year-old, you know, lieutenant there. And, you know, the compounding, the aggregate effect of all that loss. I just remember like sitting there having like a, you know, drink with my wife and just started bawling, crying, you know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? I'm like, damn, you know? And like, I still just probably get a little emotion just thinking about it now. And even though that was, you know, 13 years ago, 12 years ago, but, you know, I think it's just the aggregate of all of it, you know, just thinking through like how many great men and women, you know, have been killed in action and who literally gave their life for the country, you know, and if you knew people personally, whether or not you were there when there was an ambush or the rocket attack or the IED strike or whatever, in many ways, it's almost not totally irrelevant, but it's less relevant, I think, than when people realize is just that if you personally have known lots of people, lots of great people with such courage who died, you know, 7,000 miles from home, you know, that's powerful, you know, and I struggled with a lot of that kind of side of it all. And that's where, you know, I found tremendous power in running. You know, one of the quotes that, you know, you probably have heard before, but like, I run because it's cheaper than therapy, you know. You know, there's no doubt, like some people certainly need, you know, professional therapists and counseling. There's tremendous value. But there's also the power in going out there and kind of working through some of this stuff on your own. And that's what I did a lot of. Thankfully, in 2009 and 10, thankfully, those Green Berets did talk trash to me and tell me that, you know, that I was going to get soft. And it was on those runs that I gained clarity, and I would kind of just work through a lot of the stuff in my head. And I'm not sure where I would be if I didn't have that time and that space in the fall of 2009 through really, you know, the spring of 2011. I put so many miles, you know, in around this big cornfield, a 5-mile loop outside Ann Arbor. I just, I ran it so much, and it just was so therapeutic.
Yeah. So whether or not you realized it at the time, you were helping your own mental health. And I think
that's right.
It's interesting how sometimes things just come together for you at the right time in your life, that you had that availability. It was when you really needed it, and you just were able to utilize running, and obviously founded now an enormous organization that is getting involved in other avenues, which is what we were talking about this week on the show with the Shootout for Soldiers. So what is this Shootout for Soldiers, and how did RWB get involved with that?
Yeah, so a little bit of backstory here is that I'm from Syracuse, New York. So for those who are lacrosse fans, they know, right, that's just one of the, you know, growing up, it was there, Long Island and Baltimore. Those are kind of the three places. And of course, now it's lacrosse has spawned, you know, all over, and you have teams and, you know, all over, which is great to see. But so I was a big lacrosse fan growing up, even though I played baseball, but, you know, it's such a fun sport to play.
Absolutely.
You know, one of my best friends, my Ranger buddy at Buckner, Tim Pearson, was an All-American lacrosse player, you know, at West Point. Jeff Bryan, co-founder of the Positivity Project with me, All-American in 2004. So I got a lot of friends from the lacrosse world. And so, yeah, I remember seeing it a handful of years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, when it started popping up. I think it actually started even like more quietly, you know, than that. You know, but when Tyler started it, I was like, this is really interesting. Like, and awesome. Good on you. Like college, people coming out of college, young kids, like sitting there, you know, not military folks, but finding a way to support the military. And I remember being really inspired by that, you know, citizenship kind of inspiration. And so, yeah, I mean, like what they've built over time has been remarkable. And, sometime earlier this year, Tyler reached out and said, hey, like at a slightly different point in life right now. And, looking, is there a good home, for Shootout for Soldiers? And of course, for those who know what it is, right, it's like, it's this 24-hour lacrosse game, and you bring people in and they're encouraged to fundraise and to help generate money to support Shootout for Soldiers. I love the sponsorship, by the way. Like, what is it? The grittiest.
The grittiest hour in lacrosse.
Yeah.
The grittiest 5 hours, something like that.
Yeah, the grittiest 5 hours in charity. Yeah.
Oh yes, in charity. Right.
I love that brand. Like, that's just branded so well. I'm like, yeah, man, I've been there. I've been running on those hours, midnight to 5. That's some deep soul searching right there. But and then Dan Brosick, one of our former employees, was a lacrosse player, so he was gung ho about this. So when Tyler reached out, for us, it was like, how fast can we move on this? Yes, like we think that we are absolutely the right organization to not just keep the vision alive, but to be able to eventually to grow it. Because as lacrosse is growing, this should grow with it.
Sure.
And so we submitted our RFP, and we were selected to be the ones to inherit. And of course, in the business world, you would call this M&A, right? Mergers and acquisitions, and you don't really do that in the nonprofit world. But basically, we've adopted it. So it's Shootout for Soldiers, powered by Team RWB, and we're looking forward, not just to this year, but all the great things that we're going to do in the future through the sport of lacrosse, tapping into all the people across America that want to support and get behind the health and the wellness of the veteran community, the mental health, the physical health, the emotional health. Team Red, White, and Blue is that organization for people to get involved in and to support. And we're really excited about the road ahead and how we can continue to tap into the sport of lacrosse to make that a reality.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to point out too. I think of my one co-host Chaps, who says he'll never run again. He refuses to run, but our RWB is not just about running, it's physical activity in general. So that's why there's this natural partnership with the Shootout for Soldiers with lacrosse. So are there any other events or avenues on the horizon where RWB is looking to partner with other events that are going on?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we've been actually talking about this as a vehicle for, for the future. So you're exactly right. While running is, I always tell people, it's always the most accessible and the cheapest way to get involved, right? You don't need to join a gym. You just need to get a pair of sneakers, and and even if, depending on how minimalist you are, if you read the book, Born to Run, and you know the story about the Tamahura down in Mexico, like they run with like sandal straps on. So you don't even need to go out and get like a pair of, $100 shoes. So, but that's running. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. You probably know the West Point graduate Chandler Smith. Just actually posted a picture of himself today, getting ready for the CrossFit Games in a week, flying his Team Red, White, and Blue shirt.
Yeah, that dude is just ridiculous looking. I'll just say it.
I looked at today, I was like, man, if that guy has to have a chance to win this year, I don't know who does, because he is looking beastly. He's a great American. He's on our advisory board at Team Red, White, and Blue. He's actually going to be coaching our CrossFit camp down in Atlanta, at the end of August. But, you got him. You've got other people in sports, everything from yoga and hiking and getting outdoors. Cons, this is a big one. We know that getting outdoors is huge, because not only do you get the win from the physical activity, but you get the win from nature. And so nature is known, just being outside and outside of like the four walls and the artificial light, getting outside, into Central Park and places like that. Like it literally changes your mood. But yeah, we've got a lot of folks involved on the advisory board. I don't know exactly where it goes from here, but I'm good friends with Clint Dempsey. He lives like, right down the road. So soccer, and Kerry Walsh Jennings, on the volleyball front. So we got different people in different sports. But I don't think there's anything out there quite like this right now, that what Shootout has built over the past, 8 years or so, that's made it such a natural fit. But absolutely, we could see, getting involved and turning in and tapping into the power of other sports as a vehicle, to support veterans, specifically around their health and wellness, as you pointed out, especially that mental and physical health side.
Yeah, absolutely. Because obviously there are plenty of sports out there, a lot of opportunity for a lot of different people. So I don't imagine you will have any bit of a hard time finding more organizations or events to partner with in the future. I should also mention, when I did run my first New York City Marathon, I had my RWB shirt on. I'll have to send you that picture.
I want to see it.
Yeah. So,
that's
but Mike, it's been great to talk with you. If people want to get involved and they want to, become a member of Team RWB, how do they go about doing that?
Two ways, simple. Either go to the App Store and just download the Team RWB app. You authenticate, it takes like 3-4 minutes. We ask you basic stuff like, hey, when were you in the military, or were you in the military, and what branch were you in, and all those kinds of things. And that's the easiest way. Or you can go to teamrwb.org and you can join the team right there. So yeah, we got about 22 veterans per day joining Team Red, White, and Blue right now, which is great. We want to double that, really get up to about 50 veterans per day joining here in 2022, and making some moves to make that a reality and happen. But either way, website or go to the app and download.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I'm really happy that you and I were able to finally connect and to hear your story. And I think what Team RWB is doing is great. Last question. So you're back at school teaching, right? So
I'm in the reserves. So I go back every summer and I teach psychology to cadets.
Okay. And what is the if you could offer any piece of advice to anyone that's listening right now, and all the perspective you have, and maybe something that you share with your students, that it would be helpful.
Yeah, no, this is my go-to whenever asked any sort of tangential question like this. So I studied positive psychology in grad school, and the number one clear finding of positive psychology is that the number one driver of life satisfaction and happiness is the quality of a person's social relationships in life with their family, their friends, teammates, coworkers. Here's the problem. People are complicated. We're all complicated, right? Like we all got backgrounds, we all got stories, we've deployed, or we've, felt guilty because we deployed, but we didn't deploy, and walk the front lines. The list goes on about how complicated people are. And because of that, relationships are never without friction. Never. Like there's just always going to be that, like romantic relationships, friendships, teammates, it doesn't matter. And so because of that, I think a lot of people, tend to kind of shy away and they don't go all in, right? So my message is simple: go all in on your relationships, especially with your family and friends and people that, that you've done meaningful work with in your life, because investing in those relationships, while at times sticky and sometimes uncomfortable when you have difficult conversations or whatever it might be, those relationships are like the gold currency of life, right? It's how you're going to be happy. Because I know so many people who are wildly successful, miserable, wildly wealthy, miserable, right? Accomplish all these amazing things, miserable, right? So money and success and fame and followers on social and all that, it might make you happier if you got good relationships and good authentic ones. But if you think that all that up there is going to replace this, no way. So that's my message to everybody, especially people who are younger, coming up, teenagers and people in college. But really, just as a reminder for all of us, is that really building those relationships and investing in that, is not easy, but arguably the best thing that you can do for other people, for the community, and of course for yourself.
Okay, so go all in on your relationships. Mike Irwin, Team RWB. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you're doing for the veteran community and, for our country at large. So thank you very much for your time, and best of luck to Team RWB in the future.
Thanks, Cons. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, let's move into a little bit of save rounds and alibis. Nick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I actually put my first person on fire watch.
Love that. Love that.
So my daughter yesterday took a little spill outside. She was sprinting on the concrete, and she had a little boo-boo on her knee. And 90-year-old great Nona was watching her. So 90-year-old great Nona. She doesn't know what I'm saying because she doesn't speak English, but she's on fire watch right now. She has no idea.
Oh, Nona's on fire watch. I thought
this is great Nona.
I thought your daughter was going to get, great Nona's on fire.
My daughter is never going to be on fire watch.
Great Nona on fire watch sounds amazing. Can you imagine being woken up for your shift, but it's great Nona?
Or what if she comes in and she's like, wake up, bitch, you got fire watch.
Yeah.
90 years on Earth, no fire watch, but now she's got it. 90 years.
There you go. You reap what you sow, Nona. You gotta keep your eyes peeled for sure. All right, Kate, what about you?
Nothing on my end, I don't think. Oh, I finally showed you guys the picture of the poop that I thought was hilarious.
You did. It was
finally came. It was, wasn't it? It was a funny picture.
Yeah, it looked like one of those old gas station sugar baby candies.
Yeah, it was just a little nugget, and it was very funny. And so I'm glad I finally caved and showed you my poop.
There
Yeah,
you go.
that's it. That's my
YOLO with the Rolo. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Cons?
Yeah, so I want to introduce a new save round segment where we just do pot shots, where we just have a question. We're all going to go around really quickly. We're not going to discuss it. We're just going to give a 10 to 15 second answer. So the first iteration, I saw something on social floating around this week, and we're going to go Chaps, Kate, and then to me. So Chaps, does it matter if officers PT with their unit?
I think it absolutely does on occasion. I don't think it should be something that's done every day. I think that's partly a staff NCO's real way to monitor and lead his troops or her troops. So I don't think all the time, but I definitely think it needs to be like a once a week or twice a month type of thing for sure.
Kate?
Yes, I agree. I know it doesn't really matter, but I feel like enlisted have a lot more respect for an officer that can do pull. I don't know why or not, or can run or can do like a bunch of crunches. I don't know. You can do something impressive physically. People get your respect. I don't know. So yeah, I think it matters, but not all the time. Yeah, it's annoying to have you around all the time.
So I will say, captain and above, like if you're a company commander and above, yes, Chaps, that frequency. If you're a platoon leader, I think you need to be there a lot more, almost every day. And then I think if you're on staff, they don't ever need to see you. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. And one more thing, I would say that in this, like if you are going to do it and you are going to go all the time, don't try to lead it. Just go and participate.
Right.
Like still let the staff NCO or the platoon sergeant take charge of the actual, and then you just like participate and do whatever.
Unless it's something fun.
True.
Like slip and slide.
Like a slip and slide. Right. You know how those majors be coming out with the slip and
What
slide.
can you imagine how happy you would be if you came to a battalion level function and the sergeant major and the battalion commander had already talked about it. And instead of PT, they say, show up in your PT gear. Everybody's going to PT. Everybody shows up, like you form up at like down the road a little bit and you start running. Like, let's say you have this big event, you started a parking lot way down the road from your battalion headquarters or whatever. And that's where you form up and meet to run. Then you run like maybe a quarter of a mile together. And whenever you get back to your battalion building, it's a huge bouncy house, like slide type of situation. And nobody knew about it, but that's what you're doing for the day is just going down a water slide and having fun together.
Talk about a morale boost.
Or your commander runs you to Friendlies for ice cream.
Wow. Also good. We're giving out good ideas here for leadership.
I did a little a pride walk last month for the pride parade that was here in San Antonio. They had freezy pops that they were giving out while you walked around because it was so hot. Like the little golf cart was going on, and if you wanted a freezy pop, you can get them. And they had somebody had, I guess, longtime toolies it. They had the tops already taken off of the freezy pop, so you could
so it's ready to go.
You had it ready to go. Yeah, it was incredible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So last weekend I was up in Saratoga. I went to the racetrack for the first time ever.
Yeah.
What a scene that was. So first of all, I want to say thanks to Dave Portnoy, who reached out to me and he's like, hey, I heard you're going to Saratoga. I have a box for the season. You can use it. So I was like, oh, that's great. So I had to meet him at the track on Friday. Now, I've never been to Saratoga. So I go online, I'm looking, it says, jackets for men are required on the weekends in boxes and highly encouraged on Fridays. So I don't want to be the guy who shows up to Dave's box and looks like a jamoke, is underdressed. So I had a blazer, a pink shirt. I got a hat, like one of the, the racing type hats. And we get there to meet Dave. Didn't need that because we were also hanging out in this other area that was really just kind of run of the mill type people. And he's like, little overdressed for the picnic area, are you? But so that was a lot of fun going to the track. And then we were at this one bar called the Horseshoe that everybody says you got to go to when you're in Saratoga. It was a great time. And I witnessed something in the wild that really threw me for a loop. So I'm standing there talking to some dude, and a young, attractive girl walks by and he says, hold on, excuse me. And just gets the girl's attention and says, hey, you're pretty hot. You want to talk? The girl says, okay, yeah, just what's your snap code? And they like exchanged Snapchat QR codes. I guess that's how the kids hit that. That's just how they communicate. Then they like started a chat on Snapchat. And that was just wild to me because there wasn't much conversation, just right to Snapchat.
Much easier. And you can block somebody a lot easier than if they have your phone number too.
Good point.
True.
Good
That's
point.
true.
Good point. So yeah,
Smart
Saratoga,
decision there.
great time. Would recommend. Thanks again to Dave. Made it a great time for me. And then lastly, we all know the saga of when I made my oatmeal in Iraq with my own urine.
Yes.
I had a similar incident happen to me on Monday night. I was preparing my overnight oats, as one does.
And I pooped in them.
And I started making sloppy steaks right there.
I like to over at Trefani's, just dump my water all over it.
My hair was all slicked back. I was a piece of shit.
Anyway, I finished making it and I'm putting the milk back in the refrigerator, and I just happened to get a glance of the sell-by date. It was 5 days past, but I had already made the overnight oats. So next morning, I figured I'm not going to waste it. I got to at least try it. Tried it, couldn't taste it.
Oh yeah, 5 days, you're still good. I think it's got to go by like 2 weeks is where when it still really starts to smell funky, when you know right away. But that being said, it could be straight from the cow. If I think that it might be bad, I'll smell fresh milk and still think it's bad because it's already in your brain. Because how often are you really smelling milk anyways?
Right, that's what I smelled it and I was like, I guess that doesn't smell right.
But you don't know.
Maybe it did? I don't know.
But then when it is bad, you know for sure. But you never are like 100% sure. But whenever it is bad, you know for 100% sure. So if you're not that 100% sure, it's not bad. I want to mention before we go, big time drama in the veteran space this week on Twitter with all the different coffee company drama.
Oh, yes.
Let me tell you,
it's the biggest much to do about nothing that I've ever seen. Like Black Rifle Coffee Company has this big piece that comes out in the New York Times where they are talking about how what happened on January 6th was terrible. They don't want to be associated with that, with a lot of the Kyle Rittenhouse drama. They didn't want to be associated with that. No shit. What fucking company would want to be involved in that and say, this is what we back? Except for, that's what you would think. Yeah. Another veteran company comes in and they're like, you know what? Those lib cucks over at fucking Black Rifle Coffee, they aren't nearly conservative enough. And I really think that this is not conservative. Like this coffee company just wants to be dicks. Like that is your brand of conservatism, is just to be fucking dicks to everybody. And whenever Black Rifle is like, look, guys, we don't want to be involved in that. And you're like, look at these fucking losers. No, pal, you're the loser. Yeah. You're the loser. You're a dick. That's the only thing. Your entire masculinity is wrapped up in being an asshole to somebody else. Why?
Yeah, I don't get it. I got to tell you, I watch a whole bunch of reality trashy television. I couldn't keep up with the coffee drama. I had no interest in it. Had no idea really who was on what side. It just seemed patently ridiculous to me all the way around.
Yeah.
And it's coffee. Like, why does your coffee have to be political? If your coffee's good, just be like, hey, we're coffee's veterans. Good. We made this coffee. You don't have to go out and call people names and come up with all kinds of shit, like to be insulting to everyone. And also, take a note out of Michael Jordan's book. Republicans wear shoes too. Like, everybody wears shoes. Everybody likes coffee. Why in the fuck would you want to get rid of 50% at least of your fan base? Of somebody who could buy your shit.
But you said it best. I don't understand why a coffee company has to have a political stance one way or the other. Who cares?
There should be a veteran coffee company that's like, hey guys, thank you for serving. We did too. Here's some coffee.
We just do coffee.
That's it. We have normal people blend is what it should be called. Yeah. Just have some normal people blend.
I'm going to start a coffee company to raise funds to pay for therapy for stocking bean coffee or whatever it is. Trade it off. Yeah. Tough times.
Oh, you're drinking that coffee. Folgers guy, huh? What a
puss. What a pussy. Oh, and you have asthma too? Pussy.
What a puss. Oh, freeze-dried puss. K-cups, Then they started shitting on people with K-cups.
What?
Makes no sense. They're like, oh yeah, if you like K-cups, get out. So you don't want anybody who's not like straight up MAGA person like all the time. Like you don't want that person. And the Venn diagram of people who want that and use K-cups is pretty strong.
Strong.
So you're really cutting down your customer base.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew? Who knew coffee could be this crazy?
Not this recruit. Sound the retreat.